The sky that changed war. In the early days of World War II, as the sun rose over the Pacific Ocean, the confidence of American pilots was absolute. They held a firm belief that no enemy could ever outfly them. They possessed robust, well-built aircraft, and their faith in American industrial and technological supremacy was unshakable. This confidence remained unchallenged, until they encountered a fighter that completely rewrote the established rules of aerial warfare. This aircraft was the Mitsubishi A6M Zero. The Zero was a legend forged from thin-sheet aluminum and the uncompromising spirit of its pilots. It was a nightmare in the sky, sleek, incredibly fast, and armed with deadly precision. In initial encounters, the Zero proved to be nearly unstoppable. Its unmatched speed and maneuverability didn't just surprise American pilots. They forced them to confront a terrifying reality. Everything they had learned about dogfighting was suddenly obsolete. Pearl Harbor the day. The Zero arrived December 7, 1941, a date indelibly etched into history. It was the morning Japan showcased its power in the Pacific. In the pre-dawn hours, the roar of Japanese bombers shattered the tranquil sky over Pearl Harbor. Among the striking force flew a fighter unlike anything any American pilot had ever seen. The Zero. Its speed, its maneuverability, its lethal precision. It was all so unexpected that it left U.S. pilots utterly stunned. The Zero's design was an art form that defied comparison with any contemporary Western aircraft. It executed aerial maneuvers that seemed to defy the very laws of physics for the American fighters of the time. It climbed faster, dived smoother, turned tighter as if pivoted on a dime, and struck with brutal accuracy. As American ships burned, pilots scrambled desperately to start their planes, only to be outmaneuvered again and again once they took to the air. The Zero consistently outclimbed, outturned, and outstruck everything the Americans threw at it. It was instantly clear that the U.S. forces were facing an enemy for which they were tragically unprepared. The mystery and domination over the Pacific, the mystery of the Zero. After the attack, one question haunted every U.S. pilot and strategist. What exactly was this machine? It outperformed every American aircraft, yet intelligence reports suggested Japan possessed no such advanced technology. Rumors circulated widely. Some claimed it was heavily armored. Others whispered that it was invincible. American pilots couldn't reconcile how such a seemingly light aircraft possessed such ferocious efficiency. But the truth was far stranger and far more human. Dogfights over the Pacific. Throughout the entire year of 1942, the Zero reigned supreme, absolutely dominating the skies over the Pacific theater. From the Philippines to Wake Island, from the Coral Sea to Midway, it ruled unchallenged. This superiority was so pronounced that U.S. pilots learned a painful cardinal rule the hard way. Never, ever turn with a Zero. Once caught within its tight turning radius, escape was virtually impossible. The Zero's agility was simply unmatched. It could climb higher, execute tighter turns, and outmaneuver even the most experienced American pilots. Fear spread through the ranks. No pilot dared face it alone. The Zero's dominance was not merely mechanical, it was deeply psychological, casting a long shadow of dread across the vast ocean. The miracle of Akutan Island and the greatest discovery. A miracle on Akutan Island. Then, in June 1942, fate intervened decisively. On Akutan Island in the Aleutians, a cold, fog-shrouded, desolate place, a Zero crash-landed. The pilot was dead, but remarkably, the aircraft was almost entirely intact. It was a miracle of opportunity. For the very first time, the Americans had a chance to study Japan's deadliest weapon up close, untouched by fire or major destruction. This captured aircraft was instantly transported to a secure location for analysis, recognized as one of the most critical intelligence coups of the war. The captured Zero, America's greatest discovery. Engineers meticulously transported the wreck to a hangar. Piece by piece, they began the painstaking process of reassembling and inspecting it. What they found shocked them to their core. There was no thick armor protection. There were no self-sealing fuel tanks designed to prevent catastrophic explosions. and the aircraft's skin was made of exceptionally thin sheet aluminum, literally paper-thin in parts. The plane's incredible speed and breathtaking maneuverability came at a severe, calculated expense of pilot protection. It was fast because it was dangerously fragile. Every single pound saved in construction translated directly into higher agility and speed. The only true protection the pilot had was their courage and their exceptional flying skill. The engineers realized this was a risky yet brilliant design philosophy. The first test flight and the engineer's vision. The first test flight. When test pilot Eddie Sanders took off in the restored captured Zero, the results confirmed the engineer's fears and amazement. It climbed higher than any operational American fighter, turned tighter, and dived more smoothly. Its performance was unparalleled, but the fragility was painfully evident. A single, well-placed bullet to the fuel tank could instantly ignite a fireball. The Americans finally grasped the genius of its design: speed, agility, and precision, all built upon the deliberate sacrifice of pilot safety. They now knew exactly how to counter it: hit hard, hit fast, and never attempt to turn inside a Zero's radius. The genius behind the Zero. Back in Japan, the man behind the Zero was Jiro Horikoshi. A visionary engineer, he firmly believed that speed and balance were paramount, overriding the need for armor. To him, every single bolt, every wire, and every ounce of weight was obsessively calculated for maximum performance. It was more than an aircraft. It was a pure masterpiece of speed and aerodynamics. The Zero could fly for over 2,000 kilometers without refueling, a range unmatched by any fighter in the world, until the Americans learned its secrets and designed their own long-range counterparts. Turning the Tide and the Zero's legacy, Turning the Tide, 1943-1944. By 1943, the tide of the war began to shift definitively. The Allies had extensively studied the captured Zero. They used its secrets to design and deploy a new generation of fighters, tougher, faster, and heavily armed. The answer came in steel and firepower, the F-6F Hellcat. American pilots rapidly adopted new tactics, the most famous being the boom and zoom: climb high, dive fast, attack, and absolutely avoid turning with the Zero. The hit-and-run attack became the key to survival and dominance. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. June 1944, the Battle of the Philippine Sea, infamously dubbed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Over 400 Japanese planes were annihilated in a single devastating day. The once invincible Zero was no match for the overwhelming American industrial power and superior tactics. Japan's air superiority vanished, and its finest, most experienced pilots were lost forever. Inexperienced and desperate young pilots were sent up to face impossible odds. The terrifying legend of the Zero was rapidly fading. The final days. Legacy. By 1945, the Zero had tragically transformed. From a symbol of unchallenged dominance, it became a desperate weapon of final resort, the kamikaze. Pilots flew, knowing death awaited, believing their ultimate sacrifice might save their homeland. Few returned. The skies were filled with machines and men, intertwined in a final, tragic dance of courage, fear, and sacrifice. August 1945. Japan surrendered. Hundreds of Zeros lay abandoned on silent airfields, once rulers of the sky, now merely relics of a lost empire. American pilots who once feared the Zero now held a deep respect for it, not just as a machine, but as a profound testament to human ingenuity and uncompromising courage. Jiro Horikoshi lived to see the peace, but carried the heavy burden of his creation, a weapon of unmatched brilliance that consumed countless lives. The story of the Zero is not simply about victory or defeat. It is a timeless narrative about vision, sacrifice, and the thin, defining line between technical brilliance and human tragedy. A legend born of courage, consumed by the veracity of war, and remembered forever.